Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vaul, and in this video we're going to make a great helm. So we're going to stick with our default cube, as I actually find that quite an easier thing to start with for this rounded object, but with a sharp front to it. If you have a look at a picture, you can generally see that they have this rounded shape side and back, but a kind of pointed front. So let's rotate this along the Z-axis by 45. So that we've got that facing forward, and then I'm going to Control and A and apply the rotation, just in case we need that later. Then we're going to come into edge mode, and I'm going to shift select 3 of the edges other than the front, and will this work? Let's have a look. Control and B, and then we're going to bevel those to something like there, and we're going to probably want to up that. Let's go to, I don't know, 32. And that should be about okay. In fact, let's do that one more time. And we'll make it so that our last gaps there are about the same size as each of the segments. So it's a little bit smoother. And then I'm going to go back into object mode and let's scale this a little bit on the X-axis, because these are normally a little bit flatter than that. Somewhere around there. We'll see how this looks. We can always change that later. And then we need to scale it on the Z-axis a little bit more. Okay, so we've got our basic shape here, and that's looking about right. Let's Control and A and apply the scale so we don't have any issues with anything else we want to do. And now let's sort the shape on the top and bottom, because these aren't normally perfectly flat. So let's go into edge mode, Control and R to put in an edge loop, and then we're going to click and then bring that up slightly, somewhere to around there. That's sort of up to your own personal preference. Then we're going to go into vertex mode, Shift and Z, get into X-ray mode, and let's scale these slightly, somewhere to about there. And then same thing at the top, S, and somewhere about there, maybe a little bit more than it is on the bottom. Now these helmets are divided into separate parts because you wouldn't be able to make this out of one bit of metal, so we need to have a separate top to it, and normally this is folded round, either so that the metal folds round from the side onto the top or from the top onto the bottom. Probably from the top onto the bottom is going to look a little bit more interesting, so let's deal with that bit. So I'm going to use box cutter for this. You could use normal booleans with this, it's just a little bit quicker, so Alt and W, and I'm going to select a box cut somewhere around there. Go all the way through, and then we're going to press X to get a slice. So we've sliced the top bit off. And then we're going to press Q for hard ops, operations, and then we're going to go down to smart apply. Now I've actually got this set up so I can just press Q and Q for the quick favorites to do it much more quickly. So I'll do that for the bottom as well. Then we can make this look a little bit larger so we can see this overlap. So I'm just going to press S and Shift and Z so it doesn't extend on the Z axis at all. And we'll do somewhere around there. And we probably want to make this shape a little bit more interesting, so let's go into face mode. I'm going to I to inset that, and then we're going to G and Z to bring that up. So we've got a slightly more interesting shape for this top. That might be a little bit longer than we want, but we'll deal with that later. Let's fiddle around with that when we need to. Next, we want to make our eye slit. I guess I could do the armor on the front first. Let's just actually deal with the back. So we want a similar thing here. We want the back being separated, so we can do that at the same time. Similar theory. We're just going to cut through with a box, press X to slice, and then we're just going to QQ to smart apply on both of those. And then this one we're going to make slightly smaller, so S, and then Shift and Z so it doesn't change on the Z axis, just so we've got that slight overlap. And let's make the bottom shape well. We've got box cutter open, so I'm just going to cut through the bottom. That's probably a bit more than I need, maybe somewhere like there, which is where the neck will be, and then this is going to angle down. So D for box cutter, let's get our end on up, and then we need to select our front bit, click there. Actually, that's probably about right. There, and then cut through, and we've got that typical shape. We could make that a little bit more exaggerated if we wanted. If we just go into ever scroll there. Oh, and we've got a funky angle there. Let's delete that. That is because we've got this set as object instead of view. Let's go back and try that again. So somewhere like there, and then cut through. That's actually a little bit better. And having a slight difference here is actually quite useful because it makes it look like it's more handcrafted. I would suggest though that this would normally be so that you've got a little bit potentially of overlap there, and you'll notice we're going to need to move this or scale this slightly in the X-axis because there was a little bit of an overlap there that didn't quite work. And then let's H that. Excellent. So we're getting our general shape. I do think that this is a bit much. So let's go into vertex mode, W to get out of box cutter, and then we're going to just G and Z those up somewhere about there. Maybe scale them in slightly, and then bring the whole thing down. So that looks a bit better, I think. Then we want to deal with the front, so let's have our detailing on the front. Now, how interesting you want this to be is kind of entirely up to you, and how ornate you want it. So I'm going to do this relatively plain, I think. Maybe fiddle about it with the one that's on the front for this extra detailing. So let's Alt and W for box cutter again. We've still got our end on there. Let's do something like there. Actually, how high do we want our eye slit? Let's go somewhere like there. And then I'm going to come back here and then come out there. That should be all right. We can always fiddle later. Go along, and then I'm going to press K to knife it. And then we've got that if I go into vertex mode with this cut through there. And that's all we want at this point. And then we're going to do the same for the front, but this time actually let's just Shift and A, mesh it, and bring in a cube so we can do it manually. Yeah, that's probably going to be easier. So let's scale that down to whatever thickness we want. Move that out to somewhere here. Let's scale that up on everything other than the X. So Shift and X, we'll do that somewhere like there, and then S and Z to do it on the Z axis a bit more. Doesn't matter if it goes over this one. We're not going to be dealing anything with that. And then let's go into vertex mode. Oops, W to get out of box cutter, and G, and we'll Z that down to maybe about there. Now what I'm going to do is go into edge mode, Control and R, and then bring that down about 2/3 of the way down, somewhere around there. Control and B, and bring that out as quite a large bevel, so we've got lots and lots of edges to play with. Then I'm going to Shift and Z, go into vertex mode. Let's select those bottom vertices, and we're going to use our proportional editing set to sharp. And then we can S and X to bring that out somewhere like, how much do we want that to come out? Maybe there? That should look okay. And then we're going to Control and R to bring an edge loop in the center, Escape to confirm it, and then we'll just select those bottom ones and G and Z that down. We want to turn proportional editing off first though. So somewhere to about there. And that looks about right. Obviously this looks silly, but all we're going to do is select that, Shift select that, Q for hard ops and booleans, and we're going to go to knife. And then we can hide that, and we've got this with our cuts. So all we need to do now is select our cut. So we want something like, oops, face mode first, there, Control to there, there, and then there. Same the other side. And then we want that one, that one, that one, and that one. And then using hard ops again, we're going to press Q and then Alt over EM macro so that we can bring this out a bit. And how much do we want that out? Maybe about there. That should be okay. Now at this point, we don't want this going over our top plate. That looks a little bit silly, but at the moment our top plate is a little bit far back at the back. So that's G and Y that forward somewhere to about there. And we've got everything looking right again. Cool, pretty happy with that. Now do note that we have done this destructively in terms of this is now a permanent addition, but that should be all right. It might be that you want to fiddle. This seems like it's a little bit harsh, so I might Control and B to bevel that round somewhere like there. Doesn't need as many vertices. Let's just go down to, let's say, 8. So we've got a little bit of curving round, and we can do the same here if we wanted to. So there we go, that's looking fine. Now we just need to go into vertex mode, Alt and X, and move that across. That's using machine tools for symmetrize. You could do that with hard ops as well, just by Alt X, and then we can do that that way using the mirror gizmo. Entirely up to you how you do this. And then we want to cut out the eye slit. We're going to, again, hard ops for Alt and W, and we want our Engon again, and I'm going to do something like there, there, and because of the snapping, I know this is at the same angle, and then somewhere maybe there. And let's cut that through. Now, we might want this exactly at the same height. You can, as this edge there, you can see that we've got this slightly off. That's entirely up to you. I'm actually going to leave it. I think it's going to cause less problems. Maybe, actually, it might be nice to have this so we're going to get less problems later on with tiny little faces. So let's go into Q, ever scroll, select this, go into vertex mode, and then we're going to just select, oops, W to get out of box cutter, select those vertices, select snapping and vertex, and then we'll just G and Z, and that will snap to those vertices. In fact, I might grab those and then G and Y that, so they're going to be perfectly on that vertex there, which is going to look a little bit neater. I'm also going to do the same thing of S and X that to make that wider. Not sure if we're going to add anything later, but let's see. Now you'll notice this is now having a problem. It's not cutting it. That's because this Boolean, I should have changed that. If when you're in box cutter and you press D, you had your options up here. I've got this for behavior set as fast. I should have probably put that as exact, as it would do it straight away. So instead we're going to have to come to this, change that to exact, and now we've got that solved. Let's turn it off our face orientation because that looks a bit weird. So we've now got that there, and we still want to have this bit out the front, but let's deal with this bit by bit. First thing is, this is for 3D printing. If not, then you'd probably want to solidify this, or basically take out the inside and solidify just the outside edge. But we're not going to want this, it will look really weird, so let's fix that somehow. So what I'm going to do is come into isolation mode. Actually, let's not do it with that one, let's do it with this piece. So isolation mode, I'm going to go into face mode, select that face, I'm going to press 4 with machine tools, which is going to bring that as a totally separate bit now. So I've got this plane separated. Let's turn off snapping. Then I'm going to S and Shift and Z to scale it down however much I want. Let's go somewhere like there. And then let's go into face mode and E that down. Let's come out of focus mode, and you can see that there. In fact, that probably needs to be scaled up a little bit, somewhere around there. And then all we're going to do is we're going to cut this out of our cutter here. The temptation could be to add this in, so use a union boolean to add this into our object. That generally on something this simple will work, but I generally don't risk it. So I'm going to select that, select the one that we want to cut it out of, which is the cutter, control and minus, and then we can H to hide that, and now we've got this cutter here has that bit taken out of it. Now because I've applied everything here, if I Q and ever scroll, we won't actually find that, so I'm going to have to come down to my cutters and see which one it is. I think it is, there we go, let's just fiddle through. There we go, cube 1. So I'm going to select that, and I want to make a copy of this. So let's turn this into a separate object first. Actually, we're not using this anymore, so we can just use this. So I'm going to scale that up so it's the same diameter approximately as it is on the front, and then select that, control and minus, and now we've got that back. So H and H. So we're looking pretty good. A few more details to get in there. I think we want to put some sort of grill on the side here. Yeah, that would look good. So W to come out of box cutter, Shift A, mesh, and we're going to bring in a cylinder. Let's scale that down, but scale it on the Z axis, rotate it by 90, and then let's move that out here. That's 32 vertices. That should be fine. This is going to be fairly small. Now, in most real examples, this should be much smaller, the holes that are going to be there, like something like tiny like that. But on a small model, you're not going to be able to see it. This might be a little bit big though, so let's there and control A and apply the scale, and then we're going to bring in a section of these. So I'm going to Q, and then we're going to go to array, and let's X to change the angle of that array, and let's have 3. I reckon that'll look okay. Yep. And then I'm going to press Q, and I want another array. If you just click on this again, you just carry on editing what was already being edited. So you just press Q, and then you hold down Control as you click on array, and it makes another set of arrays. This is actually going, or was going along the Y-axis, which is why you couldn't see it. So let's do that. That should look all right. And flat, let's see what it looks like. So I'm going to just take these, I'm just going to roughly angle them to where they should be, and then G to, let's say, there. Let's rotate those around a little bit more. Yeah, that'll do. And then somewhere there. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So control and minus, and we've got those in place. Let's hide those for a second. Okay, they're going to need to be deeper. You can see that here. So let's G and move those in a little bit further. And I think this looks a little... It doesn't look nice with that angle there. So let's select on these. We want to select our second array that we've got. And let's just have the Y changing a little bit as well, so we can do that so it sort of matches. I think that's going to be a lot more interesting. Let's have a look at that. Do we want that on one side? Let's select the object, Alt X, and let's have that mirrored on the other side as well. Yeah, I think that looks fun. Right, I think we're basically done. We just need some rivets now to get this sorted. We'll want those, well, we need them down here where it's joining this back plate on. and we need them probably around the top as well. We'll deal with those separately because there's going to be different things we want to do just for speed, I think. So Shift A, let's bring in a quad sphere. Let's scale that down. Let's have the one on the sides. Do we want these all the same size? Let's see. Let's scale that up a little bit there. I think we're going to do these manually. I just think it's going to be quicker. I don't think we need to do this by any sort of complex system. In fact, we'll do it off this central object just to be easier. So we've got that mirrored, and then let's Shift and D. We'll do another one, let's say there for now. Shift and D, another one there for now. Another one there. And one there. Let's have a look at see what this looks like, if it's interfering with anything on the side. That looks about fine. These aren't even. That looks absolutely rubbish. Let's fix that and move that down a little bit. Potentially move that one down a little bit as well. But I mean, this is meant to be something that was forged by hand, so I think a little bit off is fine. But at the top there, this is, I mean, we could do this by hand. It's just going to be a bit tedious, so let's quickly look at another way we could do that. I'm going to Shift and D to get another one of those. Let's get rid of that mirror modifier, just so we've got one here. And we're going to press F2 to call that rivet. Then we're going to grab this top bit. Let's go into edge mode, and I'm going to Control and R to put an edge loop perfectly centered there. Yeah, that looks fine. Then I'm going to go into edge mode actually, and let's Control and R and put another one there, and we're going to move this off center. You'll see basically we don't want our line going all the way around perfectly. That would cause a problem with this because we'd end up with a rivet right on the front there. Do we want them that far apart? That should be okay. You'll see what we're doing in a second. So I'm going to select that edge. I'm going to go all the way to the back, which is shown by our center line there. So I'm going to press Control, and we've got that there. Then we want to copy this. Basically, we want to get a version of this that's not on here. So I'm just going to get P and separate by selection. And we've now got this separated curve. So we can just grab that there. So we want to put some points along this. So let's use our geometry nodes for this, because it's going to make it a bit easier. So let's pin this so we can keep seeing it, and actually we need to bring, where's that bit back there? Well, that's interesting that we're inside the other cube. Oh well, that should be fine, shouldn't be an issue. So let's bring, oops, where are we? Let's add a modifier and a geometry node, and we want a new geometry node. So let's start fiddling around with this. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to convert this into a curve for this to work well. If we don't, I'll show you what's going to happen. So let's instance on points. If I put that in here and then put that in there, and we'll instance this on here. So what you'll see is we get one for every single point, and we don't want that. It's going to look silly. So we need to fix that in a way. And what we're going to do is we're going to essentially say we only want a certain number of points, and we want them to be equally spaced. To do that, we have to do that on a curve. So I'm going to Shift an A, and I want mesh to curve. Let's put that in there. So now this is a curve, and then that allows us to resample our curve, which is going to allow us to put a certain number of points on it. So we've got this count here. We can do it in terms of count or length. Length is often easier to fiddle with because you can use it in relation to other sizes, but that looks probably about right. Maybe there. Let's go with that. And that's how quick it is to do those rivets this way. There was no fiddling around, do this bit by bit. It just makes it so much easier. Honestly, geometry nodes are great. But if we want to apply this, you'll notice if I click apply, everything disappears, it didn't work. We've had an error. That's because we need to make these real. So we're going to have to realize instances. That's the most common problem with this. Then we can apply all, and now these are real geometry. And I can do the same trick there of Alt and X, and then let's mirror across to the other side. So there we go, rivet's done. At that point we can hide that. So that is our great helm, pretty simple to do, and that's all the basics of effectively making most helmet designs. You want to work out what you're starting with, where you want your flat edges and your sharp points, and how you can section this off into different layers so that you can make these shapes. I will be booleaning this together, and I'll be putting a copy of this on the Patreon, so if you do want to grab this, it is there for you should you be interested in joining the Patreon. These fantastic people have, and a huge thanks to them for supporting the channel. It really is appreciated. You are all fantastic. So hopefully that has helped out on people that are wanting to make these sort of plate mail helmets. Have a great day, guys.